Hello students, I am Manisha Raj. I am taking your paper Indian Economic Development since 1947, and we have reached a phase of discussion where we are talking about the new economic reforms, and we see that how the new economic reforms was implemented in Indian economy. So in this class we will be seeing that the new economic reforms focused on two basic changes. One was macroeconomic stabilization and the other was structural transformation. In this section we see the macroeconomic stabilization. Now what do you mean by macroeconomic stabilization? The word macro means large, the bigger aspects of the economy which needs to be stabilized so that we can have a smooth production activity within the country and profits and efficiency is generated within the economy. So in order to have stabilization at the macro level, the most important policies that have to be taken care of is that first we have to control inflation, second there has to be fiscal adjustments, and third that there has to be control on the balance of payments of the nation. Now I'll discuss each of the points in detail. So first thing is the control of inflation. Control of inflation basically has been a biggest problem of Indian economy. Whenever there has been more and more production activities, we see that the inflation problems also occur in the country. Also during 1990s we have seen that the inflation was somewhere around double digit of 12 to 14%. Now if there is high inflation, it basically means that the prices of the commodities are rising at a very high level and the supply of the commodity is not there. So there is a gap between the demand and supply of the resources within the economy. When this gap becomes very huge, it takes the name of inflation and it is very difficult for the country to manage it. So we have to have lesser money without the support of the resources within the economy. Money supply should be supported with products or gross domestic product of the nation. When the liquidity or money supply is increasing within the economy without being goods manufactured or produced within the economy, it leads to inflation. So first there has to be more and more production activities within the economy so that growth take place in the gross domestic product of the nation, and when there are products available, so the available liquidity or the money will find a corresponding product in the market, therefore it will reduce the inflation pressure on the economy. So that we should always maintain an inflation level of 3 to 4% within the country. Mild level of inflation is actually boosting the private sector to produce more and more. So inflation should not be very high, it should be at a moderated level. The next one was fiscal adjustment. What do you mean by fiscal adjustment? Fiscal adjustment basically means that you have to take care of the expenditures and the revenue of the economy. Now the expenditure of the country are mainly done in terms of productive and unproductive, be it public expenditure of the government or be it in the defense cases. So you have to make sure that expenditure does not go into unproductive lines like defense or interest payments or pensions and transfer payments. You have to make sure that whenever the fiscal year starts, it produces more and more commodities within the economy and the investment is done in such a way that it yields return productively, so that fiscal policy can be managed. Whenever you have a better fiscal policy where you can generate more and more revenue against the expenditure that you have undertaken, it is said to be a smooth running of the economy. It leads to a smooth running of the economy. So that is about the fiscal policy. The third and the most important aspect is the balance of payments adjustment. What is this balance of payments? Balance of payments is basically a trading account which talks about the revenues and the revenues as well as the expenditures of the economy in terms of the national as well as international trade. So it has the surpluses and the deficits, and the most important thing is that we have to keep the balance of trade balanced. This means that there cannot be any lack between the left hand side or the and the right hand side of the balance sheet. Both the credit and the debit should balance to each other, but then obviously there is a gap, and that gap is financed either by surpluses of the economy. If the economy is underdeveloped, it cannot manage surpluses, so in that case the gap is financed by borrowings. Now these borrowings have to be moderated so that public debt does not increase to such an extent that the government keeps on servicing its own debt rather than having more and more productive public expenditure. So balance of payment talks about your entire expenditure of the nation, be it short term, long term, as well as it has a component of balance of trade, where it talks about the profits and losses of the trade or international trade taking place within the country. Now it has always to be balanced. So for that matter, we have to make sure that the country generates surpluses and the surplus helps in meeting our expenditure. But for a developing country like India, it is very difficult to generate surpluses. So we keep borrowing in order to meet the balancing position of the balance of payments. So when there is enough gap between the revenue that is being generated and the liabilities that we have, then the borrowing also enlarges, and when the borrowing enlarges, the interest payment or servicing that borrowing becomes very costly for the economy, and it is difficult for the economy to grow and develop. So for that matter, balance of payment should be modulated in such a way that the revenue and expenditure move in a balanced direction. There should not be any divergence, a huge divergence between revenue and expenditure. Whenever we are able to manage our expenditure in a positive way, we have a decent balance of payment situation, and it will never lead to any crisis like situation that India faced in 1991. As India's economic crisis was mainly a balance of payment generated crisis, we need to make sure that the balance of payments accounts are always balanced. Thank you.